In a world where talking about money can be taboo, today we've got one of Montreal's most elite financial planners to demystify everything for you. Hey guys, welcome back to Montreal's Elite Unleashed, the podcast for hustlers looking to level up their lives. Today we're so excited to have Liora Bitton, who, like I said, is one of Montreal's most elite financial planners. Thanks so much for taking the time to come and chat with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm also here too. I'm John.
Oh my God, I'm such an asshole. I'm never going to get these openings right. And if you expect me to, you are in for disappointment. I'm your host, Logan Boyce. With me, as always, is John Ehrlich. And let's dive in. So obviously,
great way to start. I love
there you go.
Obviously, financial planning is sort of a broad term, but kind of tell us about what it is that you do and how the heck did you decide that that's what you wanted to do?
Okay, so let's play it back a little bit, because what I do, a lot of people can do. Why I do the things the way I do comes from a little story of how I actually began in the industry. So to give you context, I come from a culture where getting married young is super, super prominent. And I had gotten married at 19 years old. And my parents were never financially literate. You know, I looked up to them, I admired them. They did the typical course of, going to school, going to university, getting a job, but they never taught us anything about money. And getting married so young, my fears and worries and concerns always revolved around that. I was just like always, wanting to be proactive about everything in my life. So I actually hired a financial advisor the year that I got married, because I was like, I want to do things right. My parents would talk to me a lot about saving my money, but then suddenly I started hearing terms of investing and I wanted to understand what that meant and what that looked like. And when you're 20 years old, you don't know much, right? You get out of school and you're just like, I'm going to go with it. So when I hired my financial advisor, I remember the first time he spoke to me about investing, he's like, there's years where you could make money and years where you could lose money. And just hearing the word lose money,
you're like, no,
I went into a full panic. I'm like, no, absolutely, I refuse. But then I'll never forget the moment that was like an aha moment for me. He actually pulled out a compound interest calculator. And funny enough, that's what I do with my clients today. And he was like, listen, Liora, if I were to tell you that you invest, $1,000 a year for the next 30 years, if you put it aside, how much money are you going to have? And I'm like, $30,000. And he's like, okay, and is that going to be a lot of money? I'm like, no, absolutely not. And then he's like, imagine I told you now that you can invest it and you're going to earn a certain rate of return. And then he shows me the number on the screen and I don't remember what the exact number was, but I was like, wait, what? Like $30,000 can turn to like hundreds of thousands of dollars? I'm like, tell me more. And he's like, yeah, it can. And that's kind of how the concept of investing came about. And those years went by and I started becoming super addicted to it until one day I actually had a meeting with him. I think I was like 3-4 years into my marriage at that point in time. I just had my daughter. And I made a joke in one of our meetings and I'm like, see, I could do your job better than you. And he was actually like, well, I'm looking to expand. And if you want, you can join our team. And like, you're talking to me coming from like a very conservative approach of you need to make your money, you're living paycheck to paycheck, every dollar is counted, to suddenly like you're telling me jump into a commission-based industry where I know nothing about the industry. But I also knew I hated teaching. Oh yeah, to give context, I used to be a teacher. I hated teaching. I was good at it, but I hated it. Going into school every day, doing the same thing over and over. I think the ADHD in me was just like, this is not going to cut it for the long haul of things. And I was at a point in time and I was at a crossroad where I was like, my expenses every month are low enough that, I didn't need much to survive. And I was like, I had just had my daughter and I'm like, I'm young enough that it's fine. Even if I fail, it's not the end of the world, but at least I'll give it a shot. So what I did was I literally went and took my course. I did it over that summer, the year that I graduated McGill.
And you started working with that person?
And yeah, he was like, listen, if you're serious about this, go get your license. Come find me when you're ready. Because some people will take 2-3 months to get their license. Some people would take 2-3 years, right? So he's like, I'm not going to necessarily invest in you until, you pass. So I was like, okay. And when I put my mind to something, I go all in. And in 4 months, I got my license. And I remember I started that September. And obviously it's scary because you're not making money at first. So I actually kept my teaching job. I was teaching during the day part-time just to kind of like have my base income there. And then I was basically going and hunting for clients at night. So that kind of became a little bit of my reality. And then I became super passionate about it because as I was meeting more and more people, I realized, hey, everybody's making money, but nobody actually knows what the hell to do with it. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 people. It was every single person I came across. So, we went deeper and deeper into it. And to say why I do what I do is because at the time, my best friend, her dad was like a father to me. And, he was a big business owner, built a crazy business, multiple stores in the old port, had real estate, had assets. And because he loved me like a daughter, he was like, you know what, Liora, I'm going to invest in you. And he was probably one of my first clients who invested a lot of money with me in my first year, you know, just to kind of like set me up. And that obviously started the conversation. And I had taken on that file with my mentor at the time because he had a lot more experience. So I felt more confident going into like a high net worth profile with someone with experience. But I got to learn along the way. And his situation ended up opening up the door to everything I do today, because basically he got sick. A few months into me starting to work with him, he got sick. He had a cancer and it downgraded really, really quickly from there. And, you know, in his daughter's mind, she was inheriting like a crazy estate. And push came to shove when he actually passed away. We realized to what extent he hadn't done any proper planning. And we're, I'd say 7.5 years later, and she's still dealing with the repercussions of what happened at that point in time. And, you know, people don't know that all these assets, there's taxes to pay, and that if you don't have proper wills set up, the government owns your things, and that if you don't structure things properly, you can't even touch your assets until everything is figured out. And that the government doesn't care that you just lost your parent, you know, they're gonna charge you a tax bill and there's interest that's gonna start building up on it. And then lawyers come into the picture, and then, you know, taking over businesses comes into the picture, and then crazy old business partners come into the picture because they want a piece of the pie as well. So, you know, she's literally still dealing with it almost 7.5 years later. And that for me made me understand that, you know, I'd be doing a disservice to people if I didn't educate them on how to plan and how to build their foundation and how to structure themselves early on and how to be proactive. And that's where the passion came about.
That's so cool. And man, it's starting with teaching is so interesting, because you spend your entire day dealing with snot-nosed brats, and then you finish your day dealing with older snot-nosed brats that think they know better with their money. That's
I always
funny.
joke that I'm like a teacher for adults today, right? So that gift of being able to take information that was complex or, you know, high level. I always say sometimes people are going to try to explain a concept and they're going to try to sound really smart and use these big words, but in reality, they're just losing the person's focus. So
I have a burning question.
Go for it.
What were you teaching?
Oh,
I was an elementary school teacher. So I taught everything from kindergarten to grade 6. I did math, science, French, Hebrew, English. I did it all.
Okay.
Basically. Yeah.
So you were dealing with children then, and like the link between, and I think that's actually really important too, because children's logic center isn't fully there, but some adults just don't have their logic.
I still don't have it figured out. So.
Well, it is crazy when you're talking to people and you hit this thing that it's like so logical that it should be this way, but they can't grasp it. And money is one of those things, because people really don't understand it.
I don't think it's that they're not logical. They're just not educated, right? You don't know what you don't know. And nobody teaches you. It's not like you go to school and there's anybody there being like, hey, when you get out of CEGEP or when you get out of university, this is how you need to structure yourself in order to plan, right? The planning usually comes after you've gone through life and you're working and you feel like Groundhog Day and you're going. And then at a point in time, you look at your life and you're just like, something doesn't make sense.
I find most people do very minimal planning. And if they do, it's right around tax season. And they stick to the plan for 2 to 3 months.
You'd be surprised, even at that, they still won't plan. In the first years of my career, the clients that I had the most with, like the clients that I was meeting the most were clients who were hitting the age of 50 to 55 and were realizing that their retirement was anywhere from like 10 to 15 years away. And suddenly they're panicking because they're just like, what happens? Like, I don't have, you know, enough money put aside. I don't want to work for the rest of my life. I have my house that's still not paid down. And that's when they start, you know, questioning. But at that point in time, it's not that they're too late. It's that the work they're going to need to put in order to get to their end goal is going to be so drastic, because for all those years they pushed it off, and now they're just, either something happens in their life that kind of shakes them up, or it's like a trauma. You know how that you say people change when they experience trauma.
Yep.
So it's either they've experienced some form of trauma that kind of slaps them in the face, or it's just suddenly they're like, I don't want to be working for the rest of my life. I've been working for the last 20 years. I have another 10, 15. I want an early retirement, but they have no idea how they're going to do it. They don't even know what the government's going to give them for their retirement. What I always say is people move if it's usually 2 things that move people. It's inspiration or desperation. And so let's inspire some people here. Give me a story of like a huge win. Maybe it's early in your career, maybe it's in the middle of your career or something, but give me a huge win. So a major win. I mean, listen, there's been a lot of different wins throughout the last 7 years. It's why I'm still doing what I'm doing, because I feel like at every, point I've helped a client one way or another. I think when I started feeling the bigger wins was actually when I stepped into like helping a lot of business owners, mainly structuring themselves, because at a point in time after this whole scenario with my best friend's dad, I went in the rabbit hole of understanding how corporations work, how estate planning works, how trusts work, how insurance policies work, just really wanting to understand so that I make sure that if ever I meet someone else in this exact position, I can do everything to kind of, protect and save them. So probably one of the biggest wins was actually these two brothers that have become my clients. They are in the medical field. One brother's a doctor, the other one owns a few clinics. And when I met them, they were so poorly structured that it was like mind-boggling. Again, they've made a lot of money. They've been operating for the last 10 years, but nothing made sense. And one of the first mistakes that I noticed was, understanding corporations and liabilities, right? Because when you get incorporated, a big part of it is also like to protect yourself from liability, but to create a difference between the individual and what they're trying to run. And basically these brothers were operating 4 different businesses under the same corporation, which then meant that there was liability with each one of the corporations, right? That's like a big problem. I don't know if that makes much sense, but in reality, every business should operate under a separate corporation. That's how you protect yourself. Because I'll give you an example. If something goes wrong with one of the businesses, if all the businesses operate under the same corp, then everything becomes liable. Mm-hmm. If they have 4 clinics, but something goes wrong with one clinic, all 4 clinics suffer the consequences. Versus if they were separated in 4 different clinics, in 4 different corporations, then if one clinic, something happens, it doesn't affect the other 3 clinics. So when I met them and I noticed that, I was like, okay, we need to clean this up. And it's a lot of work. It's annoying. It's money, it's fees, it's expenses. But a year later, that actually ended up saving them a ton because one of the clinics actually went under. And had they not done the proper structuring, then the 2 other clinics or 3 other clinics would have gone under as well.
Oh shit.
So that saved them practically $3 million in and of its own from just one thing that they had to restructure. And that's besides all the other money we saved them on taxes and how we set them up and we, implemented everything else. But in and of its own, it just makes you realize how like nobody teaches you this. And even their own accountant never spoke to them about this. Cause I always get that. Like, why didn't my accountant tell me that? And, I always say an accountant is good at what he knows how to do, right? But there's a specialist for everything. When you go see a doctor, right? You can go see a general GP and he'll kind of assess you, but if he's not sure, he's going to send you to a specialist. So it's the same thing in the financial world, right? You can have the accountant that knows the basics and the fundamentals and does what he's good at, which is filing your taxes, remitting them, implementing your numbers. But at the end of the day, you need to surround yourself with a sphere of professionals and specialists in different areas to make sure that your entire operation runs well. Right? Usually they should all be a complement to one another, but at the end of the day, it's not always the case. And having that awareness, just protects you on all accounts. So
it's interesting. You're dealing a lot with business owners, and in my experience, some business owners can be a little bit, not you, Mr. Listener or Mrs. Listener, but in my experience, some of them can be a little bit egotistical, a little bit self-motivated, and I think that's okay. But the question that I have for you is, when you go to them and say, hey, you've structured this so poorly, how do you navigate not pissing them off? Or you're just like, whatever, fuck it. If they get pissed, who cares? Pardon my French.
I'll tell you truthfully, I think a big part of it is obviously building the relationship, right? I don't just walk up to any random stranger and tell them, hey,
no, you don't just be like, hey, what's your corporate structure like? That's wrong.
No. You don't have an ink? What are you doing?
I'll tell you truthfully, I think that, the industry has a bad rep because all these advisors are just here, meeting a lot of clients and pushing a product on them. Part of the competitive edge that I have is that a lot of, what I do with my clients is I do so much planning before I ever get to any of that. And I make sure that they're so well structured. At the end of the day, they know that I care. I show them that I care. When I meet a client for the first time, I joke that the first meeting is like a first date because it's a relationship. It's a 2-way street. And I want them to know that they can trust me and that I can trust them and that there's a mutual respect in that regards. At the end of the day, I can give you all the advice in the world. If you want to follow it, that's great. If you don't, that's on you, right? But when a client sees that and oftentimes you'd be surprised, but it's very rare that I get those business owners that are like, I know better than you, because they know that they don't know better, right? They're really, really good at what they do.
Well, I mean, they took the meeting for a reason, I would imagine.
Exactly, right? So you'd be surprised. And I find entrepreneurs in general, for the most part, they want to do better. They want to grow. They want to learn. They want to, they don't want to make mistakes if they don't have to. Oftentimes a lot of times they don't have time for it, or, they'll push it off until it's maybe a little too late or until something happens. But for the most part, once they deem it's important, or once they understand why it's important, then they do it. So when I go to a business owner and I tell them like, hey, your structure's not done properly, I take the time to explain it. I teach them. That's where it goes back to like, I'm a teacher for adults.
Nice.
I teach it to them. I explain it to them. I speak in a language that they understand, and I dumb it down so that they don't feel stupid, and then they feel empowered to want to do more about it, right? Because at the end of the day, if I tell you, Logan, like, your entire structure could come tumbling down, you're just like, everything I built can come tumbling down with one thing. You're not going to let that happen. You're going to do everything you need to do to make sure that that foundation is solid. So I've honestly never felt such a pullback in that regards.
Very cool. Very, very cool. So I guess another question that I have for you is, you were alluding to the conversation that you had with the guy that you met, and he kind of took you under his wing for a little while.
Yep.
I've been extremely fortunate in my career to have some great mentors, but how long did that mentorship last, and who was your next mentor after that, and how did your entire business flourish after that second mentorship? I'm assuming that there is one.
Yeah, of course. So mentorship is extremely important. I genuinely believe a good mentor can either make or break you. I was very fortunate that all my mentors in my life have been good. Some lasted the course, others didn't. Sometimes you come across mentors that want to mentor you until, you start doing better than them, and then they don't necessarily like that. And then you meet other mentors who, just really want to see you thrive and succeed. But I also say it's seasons in life. Not everyone is meant to stay in your life forever, and that's okay. And there's no hard feelings. I don't think I've ever burnt a bridge, and I don't think I ever want to burn a bridge, because at the end of the day, I'm super grateful for everything and anything that was given to me, that was, provided, that was shared, that was handed over to me. I wouldn't be where I am without them. Those two mentors, I was under them for about 2.5, 3 years. And then I eventually ended up leaving. So I used to be a career agent. I used to work for one particular company, and I was only able to sell their product. And I realized quickly that if I wanted to grow and to expand, actually, no. What happened was I had a client come to me with a better illustration from another carrier. And again, you're 24, 25 years old in the industry, and you're being sold to sell your one product, and that's all you know. And then suddenly you're caught off guard because you're like, oh, there is something better, right? It kind of starts putting you into question mode. And I started questioning, because I don't ever just take what I'm told for granted. And I started questioning, and I ended up being introduced to my current mentor, and she's still my mentor almost 3.5, 4 years later. And she's a shark in the industry. She's kind of like #1 estate planner in Quebec, #9 in Canada under her MGA. And she saw like a mini version of herself in me. And when I met her, it was exactly that period where I was starting to realize that there are other carriers out there, and there are other companies, and there are different ways of operating. And that if you really want to grow and expand your business, you can't just offer one product or one service. You have to be able to have, multiple offers and options available to you. And she actually gave me a challenge. So when I met her, she was like, Liora, I'm going to do something. I'm going to give you a scenario, right? You're going to build it out the way you know how to build it out. I'm going to build out the same scenario, and then let's compare our work. Let's see who has the better option. And I was so nervous. She's even like, I'll even give you another scenario and go back to your people and have them build it for you. Like go back to your carriers and have them build it for you. Let's see what they come up with. A week later, we come back. I was actually late on the assignment because my carriers couldn't get back to me quick enough. And we get on the Zoom again and we start comparing. And guys, my eyes just like, I was mind boggled. I was like, oh my God. Because it wasn't just a little bit better. It was substantially better. And suddenly in that moment, I just started to panic, because all that went through my mind was like, oh my God, all these clients that I've been serving for the last 2-3 years, everything I've sold to them, everything I've implemented, everything I've done for them, I started questioning whether or not that was actually the best thing for them, right? At the time, I thought it was the best thing for them, but now I started panicking and questioning. And that kind of led to me jumping the gun and going in the broker world. And this mentor, listen, she was super busy. She deals with ultra.
I want to dive into, you said that she saw sort of like a mini version of you in her.
Yeah.
So I think it's a recurring theme when people talk about the mentors that see something in somebody, but I think it's something that can be worked on and refined. So what do you think were the qualities that she was looking for? Because I have this hallucination that she was probably looking for somebody to pour some knowledge into, because I have the belief that everybody that's good at something wants to help people do that, but they're just not going to help somebody who's not going to implement. They're not going to help somebody who's going to be ungrateful. So the question that I have for you is, what do you think she saw in you tangibly that she was excited to pour into you?
So first of all, she's a very giving person in general. She's like one of the most philanthropical people I've ever met in my entire existence. She doesn't have a selfish bone in her body. And that was something I saw very early on. What she saw was she was a woman in the industry, and she's about 18 years ahead of me. So she actually made it in the industry at a time where women in the industry was not as common, right? You know, you're up against like big players, big dogs, big men who just, you know, it's very cutthroat and it's very competitive and it's very, each one's out for their own back, right? So she had to make it. So she kind of became this like bulldog, right? And seeing me, she was like, I want to help her avoid that. Right? So we actually had a very similar trajectory. We both got married young. We both had a kid. We both struggled with certain things at home growing up. We both went through like a separation and a divorce. So there was like a lot of, you know, similarities that she saw, and she just basically wanted to help me. She wanted to cuddle me. She wanted to protect me. She didn't know much about me at the time, and I didn't know.
You must have shown her something with like work ethic or energy or something.
The energy speaks for itself, right? At the end of the day, that's not something you can take away. I was always very ambitious. I wanted to learn. I have no ego. When it comes to learning, I have zero ego. And I think that that's what helped me along the way, because I don't think I know better than anyone. And I'm always in a state of learning. And I think that as a business owner or as anyone, people stop learning. At a point in time, they get comfortable and they just stop learning and they stop wanting to learn. You know, I've met people that they think they know better than everyone, and anyone else's input and advice just doesn't sit well with them. So when you meet someone that's actually receptive to your feedback, I don't take feedback badly ever. I always say it's not what you say, it's how you say it. If you give me criticism, I know you're trying to improve me, so I'm never going to take it bad. But a lot of people do. And then they shut down, and then they don't want to hear you, and then they don't take it, and then they have to go through it. They're going to get to the same end goal. It's just probably going to take them 3 to 5 years instead.
People also don't want to admit things to themselves too. Like what you just said there about like, oh my God, was I selling the wrong thing to people this whole time? And you just didn't know that wasn't the best product for them. A lot of people don't want to have to admit that. It breaks their whole reality for the last X amount of years. And I find a lot of people want to live in that cuddled environment, but you have to be able to just shatter your whole world and say, you know what, I'm going to live in this entirely different world now. And I need to learn how to live in this world, because before I was here and I didn't know what I didn't know. Now I know so much more. And it sounds like you get obsessed with things.
I do. And that's been me my whole life. Like even before I got into the industry, I mean, my friends can tell you when I was a mom, like when I gave birth to my daughter, I was that mom. Like me and my 2 best friends at the time had our babies at the same time, like literally 5 days apart. And I was the mom who knew everything about everything. I had researched the best strollers and the best car seats and the best this and the best formula and the best things to do with your baby. And then my daughter had like something called low muscle tone. And I went crazy basically figuring out every single physiotherapy trick, to the point where I hired a physiotherapist in Texas because it was COVID time and I didn't like the ones in Montreal. And she had an approach. I was willing to fly out to Texas just to make sure that my kid had the best of the best. So my mind just works that way. It's like when I want to understand something, I will not stop until I get the answer. And everybody knows that that's how Liora is, right? Like
that's wild.
It's just such a recurring theme. Yeah. I wish you could have been a fly on the wall in so many of our podcasts here, because obsession and getting super into stuff like you just described is the ultimate recurring theme for people who are successful that we have on this podcast.
But everything you were saying there, I was like, I've been there. And then you went so much further. Cause I was like, when I had my son, I was like, I'm gonna write a book. I'm gonna write a book about this. I need to know everything so I can write this book. And then I got to a point where I was like, man, I don't know if I want to write that book. I'm gonna put my energy back where I need to focus.
I'm the point of reference to everyone in my life. It's to the point where like my own mom is gonna call me, my friends are gonna call me, anyone's gonna call me, and they're gonna be like, I know you're very resourceful. What do I do with X, Y, and Z? My mom, my sister, my friends, my clients. Like I have clients that are literally going to call me to ask me about random subjects because they know I'm just going to know about it. I love being versed in multiple different areas so that I can have a conversation with everyone and anyone. You know, I always find that like, some people are just really good at talking about what they do, but they cannot have a conversation about anything else. And that for me, just, it doesn't work. So that's always been something in me before I was even an entrepreneur, right? Even in teaching, I was like, I need to find a way to teach that's not boring. And I need to find a way to teach that, you know, like if people, I had this one student I'll never forget. And she was like this troublemaker student. And all the teachers complained about her. And I'm like, I'm going to find a way to love her and to make sure that she loves me back and that she's excited to learn. And literally that is what ended up happening. So it's just, I don't take no for an answer. I push the envelope, I question, I challenge, I go into the rabbit hole, as you said. And that's been my approach my whole life, right? Sometimes to my detriment because I could go a little crazy with it. But I mean, I think you need it to be successful. I think you need it to disrupt.
It's funny too, because we were talking before this podcast, it's like people get burnt out. So it's so interesting to find people who can get obsessed and get to that level of obsession where they just need to keep going and working on it. And they'll work tirelessly for hours, no sleep. They'll miss meals. They'll go crazy, but they won't burn out.
I don't burn out. Like I've never felt, and I've worked crazy hours and I've had long days. I don't feel burnt out ever.
Why do you think that is? Do you think that it's just that you're not built to burn out, or do you think it's something that you're doing?
I'm passionate.
There you go.
I love it. It's passion.
That's exactly what it is.
And people feel your, I always get this. When people hear me talk about finances, they hear my passion behind what I say. And then they're just like, it's contagious. Like I've met people that when I first met them, they were like, I hate insurance. Don't talk to me about it. You're never going to convince me otherwise. And guys, within 45 minutes, no joke, you see just the demeanor change and the anger go away. And suddenly they're just like, okay, this makes sense. Okay, I get it now. I understand it now. You know what? This is genius. Because there's so many ways to utilize it and leverage it and have it working for you. So again, it's just a matter of being different and standing out and not doing what everybody's doing. It's so easy to sell a product. It's so much harder to build a relationship and to, I think that in like the same thing in real estate, we get this all the time too, where it's like, there's that bad connotation on the industry. There's this bad thing. And for you guys too, it's like, you've got like Dave Ramsey over here saying like, don't do this, don't do X, Y, and Z. And then people are feeding into that. They think they're getting knowledgeable, learning something, but they're learning the complete. Yeah, that's the TikTok generation. You know, I had a client, guys, come to me and so in the US, there's like tax laws around buying these like big luxurious vehicles that weigh a lot, and it's a complete write-off for your business and this and that. And I've heard it, I've seen it on TikTok. Again, I don't know much about US tax, but I have a client one day who comes to me and he's like, come see my new car. And I'm like, wonderful. And I go outside and he bought a G-Wagon and I'm like, wow, it's gorgeous. And he's like, yeah, and it's a write-off. And I'm like,
no, it isn't.
I'm like, wait, what?
Oh my God.
I'm like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, it's like a full write-off for my company. And I'm like, no, it's not. And he's like, of course it is. It's because it weighs more. And I'm like, are you filing taxes in the US? I'm like, did you open a business in the US that I didn't know about? And he was like, no. And I'm like, I didn't. It took me a good 10 minutes. He's like, Liora, what's wrong? I'm like, can you give it back? That's
actually the funniest friggin' story, and I think it's a perfect place to end on it. So first of all, thank you so much for taking the time and sitting down with us and shooting the breeze with us. But more importantly, I think all the listeners who are listening to this are feeling your energy and probably want to find a way to start planning their financial future with you. So how would they go about doing that? What's the best way of getting in touch with you?
Either they can reach out to me by email or on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, there's all my information, and I feel like that's a great platform. Or on Instagram. By all means, you can reach out to me on any of the social media platforms out there, and I have all my information there for you to have. And it would be my pleasure to assist.
Awesome. Thank you again, Liora Bitton. Thanks again for tuning in to Montreal's Elite Unleashed, the podcast for hustlers looking to level up their lives.